Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of Classic Gamer 74. I am your host, Anthony Ventrilo, and today we're going to talk about my all-time favorite arcade game, Popeye, by Nintendo. Because of the resurgence and popularity of Popeye during the early 80s, it made sense that Nintendo would create a video game around him and his friends. They did follow the damsel in distress model that had been set forth by Donkey Kong a year earlier. You had Popeye, the protagonist and the hero. Olive Oil was the damsel in distress, and Bluto, or in this version they call him Brutus, was the antagonist. Because the arcade game was so popular, it was ported out to every available system at that time. And over time, it's been ported out to just about every system in existence. The only game that has been ported out more times than Popeye was the original Donkey Kong. Besides being one of my all-time favorite video games, it also has to be one of my all-time favorite cabinets. Here's a side view of the cabinet of the Popeye Arcade game. Here's the front view of the cabinet itself. Nowadays, it's actually possible to put several games in one video game cabinet. And if I ever get a chance to do that, I'm definitely going to have all those games put into the Popeye cabinet. Okay, so that's enough of my yakking. Let's get down to what everybody wants to see, the Popeye game itself. So here we have the Popeye Arcade game. Okay, so here we go. Now the premise of the game is that you are Popeye and Olive Oil is going to be blowing you kisses. And Bluto is angry, so he's going to try knocking you into the water. Now, every time she blows a kiss, a little heart will float down, and you have to catch them before they hit the water. And not only is Bluto coming after you, but the sea hag will also appear out of nowhere and throw bottles at you. Now, you have to keep away from Bluto, but because he will knock you out and thus you lose a life. The only way you can go after Bluto is to punch the spinach on the side, and then in the short amount of time before the music ends, you have to catch him. And of course, he takes off running. But if you can catch him, you can knock him out, and in that brief respite, you can pick up some more hearts for extra points as well. And here he comes back again, so you're back to catching the hearts. Alright, this is the second level. Now in this one, Olive Oil is playing a harp, and she's sending you love notes, and you got to collect those. Now you see you get some extra added help from J. Willington Wimpy, who is down on the teeter-totter, and Sweet Pea, who is floating around on the balloon. Now this level is a little bit faster pace, and Bluto runs extra fast when you hit the spinach, and the sea hag will sometimes appear on both sides and throw bottles at you from two different directions. Now, like I said, it's not always possible to catch Bluto, but you can use that time period when you're invincible to pick up love notes for extra points. Alright, here's the third and final stage. In this stage, Olive has been kidnapped by the sea hag's buzzard, and she's calling for Popeye to help her. So you collect the letters of the word help, and a small ladder is being built at the bottom that will help Popeye to reach Olive. So not only do you have to deal with Bluto in this round, you also have to deal with the sea hag and that sea hag's buzzard. So here we go, wham, knock Bluto out. And while he's down, let's try to collect the rest of the letters to help Olive Oil. And here's how the level ends. And then the game just starts over again from there. Just a little bit faster, and Bluto comes after you faster and throws more bottles, and the sea hag throws more bottles, and it just picks up from there. So it just kind of repeats those 3 levels over and over again till you either run out of gas, or you run out of quarters, or you run out of lives. Now, the game was created in the arcade by Nintendo, but Parker Brothers purchased the right to port the games out to the various systems at that time. So let's check out and see how Parker Brothers interpreted this game on each of the different systems. First up is the ColecoVision. Okay, so here's the ColecoVision version. As you can see, the graphics are about as close as you're going to be able to get for a home video game system at that time to the arcade. So graphic-wise, the game is great, but as you can see, the controls are kind of clunky and don't really respond as fluidly as, say, the Atari 2600 version did. This is why I did not like the ColecoVision version of just about any game. I was not a big fan of Coleco. I didn't like the controls. I didn't like the joystick. Basically, I just didn't like the ColecoVision, and you can kind of see why as we compare the different ported versions of this game. So as you can see, the ColecoVision was great as far as the graphics, but gameplay, I would say definitely not. Now here's the Atari 2600 version of the game, which, although the graphics weren't as good as the ColecoVision, I believe that this was actually the best of all the ports. Check it out and see what you think. Okay, so here's the Atari 2600 version. The graphics are not as good, but the controls are much more fluid. But besides from the graphics not being that good, you know who is who. You just got to use your imagination a little bit. You don't really see the sea hag come and hit you. Every time you catch a heart, or I think that's a heart, she just appears out of no. Actually, she doesn't appear. You see the bottle come flying at you, and when you get the spinach, Bluto doesn't even try to run. He just stands there and lets you hit him. All right, so here's level 2. You can see it's a little bit similar to the arcade version. No Wimpy and no Sweet Pea and no Teeter Totter, but you do have the 2 trampolines at the bottom that you can use to jump up and get away from Bluto. She is still dropping love notes, but you don't see her with the harp. It just kind of looks the same as she did in the first level. But you are able to keep track of your number by the corresponding building that says Popeye, that shows you how many love notes you have to catch in order to progress to the next level. Now Bluto is just kind of standing there chucking bottles at you, and he's able to jump down, and there he stands still and lets you knock him out with a punch. Alright, now let's check out the final level of the Atari 2600 version. As you can see, it's pretty basic, but again, it's much easier to move around in this version than in the ColecoVision. Now in this version, she's not crying for help, she's just throwing X's, and you got to pick those up. The sea hag is still invisible, and there's no buzzard this time. So it's a little bit easier than the arcade version and the ColecoVision version, but yet still good in its own right and very enjoyable. I would play this game for hours on end as a kid. And here we go, gonna get that spinach and go after Bluto, and he just stands there and lets you hit him. Wham, right into the drink. And that was the Atari 2600 version. In my opinion, the best ported version of the game. Like I said, the graphics weren't perfect, but you know who was who, and if you were familiar with the game, all you had to do was just use your imagination to know who the characters were. Now let's check out the Intellivision version. Now the Intellivision version is a little bit of a step up. I guess. I mean, the colors are a little bit clearer as to you can tell who's Popeye and who's Bluto, but yet the controls are not as fluid as the Atari version. You can see that they tried really hard to make it as close to the arcade as possible with the limitations of the Intellivision. And again, I'm not a big fan of the Intellivision. I didn't really like the controller at all. And a lot of the games I thought were kind of substandard. But yet, overall, I think this version is better than the ColecoVision version. Except when you get to the third level. I really hate that little bitty platform that you're supposed to slide back and forth with, and then here comes the buzzard. So again, they really tried really hard to make this as close to the arcade as possible. Well, that concludes this week's episode of Classic Gamer 74. I hope you all enjoyed it. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy any of the games that are mentioned on this channel or some of your own favorite classic games, please visit muparadise.me, where you can find all those games and the emulators to play them on. Also, don't forget to visit AtariAge.com for everything Atari. I'm Anthony Ventrello, and once again, thank you for visiting my channel, and I will see you guys next week. Until then, have a blessed day. Goodbye.